Welcome to Journey to Oz, the podcast where we share migration stories from overseas to Australia. We're both registered migration agents, Evan, who specialises in employer-sponsor visas, and myself, Nick, who specialises in family visas. Over the years, we've helped many clients who've had very interesting stories to tell. Evan, how are you today?
Yeah, doing well, thanks, mate. I'm actually fine enough that the last episode we discussed about the bridging visa holders, they have to get the travel exemption to be able to come back into Australia. And funnily enough, I had two consultations today on my consultation days, and I had one in the morning, one in the afternoon about that exact same question. So I actually got to refer to episode 7 to both of those, which was quite good. How have you been, mate?
Yeah, I'm actually recovering from COVID. So I test positive last week and I've been in isolation ever since. So got a couple of days left in isolation. So I'm actually recording from my son's bedroom where I've been the whole time. So sleeping here, working here. It's been a fun week so far. So yeah.
And I've been checking on you with your symptoms and stuff over the last few days, but I haven't been checking how your back's been going in the single bed.
I'm sort of used to it now, actually. It's not as bad as what it was at the start.
There you go. Less is best.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah. What have you got for us today, Evan?
This is a fantastic story which has so many different inspiration elements. And it's about a gentleman named Prosper who came from Zimbabwe to Australia 10 years ago. Now, Prosper has a beautiful goal, which is to be a role model to people that don't necessarily have a role model, because that role model to him when he was growing up and his entire inspiration for migrating to Australia from Zimbabwe was his math teacher. And that was back in school back in 1998. He wants to be a role model to other people so that they can be inspired to do greatness with their life as well. So I wanted to start the chat with Prosper by asking what feelings did he have when he first learnt about a world outside of Zimbabwe?
When I first learned about Australia, that was a time when I was 13 years old. So I'm not quite sure if the context is available for your listeners right now. So I was born in a small town in Zimbabwe in Africa. And obviously, growing up there, life was a little bit tough, okay? Whatever people see and watch on TV pertaining to Africa, we had that and more, okay? So some of the kids that we had going to school probably didn't have shoes or didn't even have adequate uniforms. And, one lucky thing happened. Obviously, it wasn't lucky at that time because we didn't realize, but we had an exchange that was brought into our school when we were 13. And she completely changed the course of my life there even.
And what did that person, whether it was on exchange, what did they let you know about a life where they'd come from?
This teacher told me about Australia and all the incredible opportunities that were on offer. And it just taught me a whole new world outside of our little small town. So naturally, in an African village, we had... in Zimbabwe at that time, we had only one president, and he's very famous, President Mugabe, and he had been the president for over 20 years. Now, as soon as I got to Australia, I think we've had 4 different prime ministers here. Now, can you imagine going through your entire life only knowing one president? What that created even was a stale economy where even the CEOs or leaders within the community felt it as a culture not to, let go of their positions. So, if somebody had been in a position for more than 15 years or 20 years, they just kept holding on to that. And the only way they were going to yield that position was to, somebody they knew. So it was a lot of nepotism. And if you didn't grow up in an area or in a place where, your blood or your family line was, in line to some sort of rank in society, then obviously you're just going to be, subjected to all the low jobs that were available at that particular time. And, with Africa, it's not as much, compensation in terms of money, et cetera, et cetera. So we just grew up in an area like that where we didn't think we would amount to anything.
Yeah, and such lack of change as well brings stability, but then I guess that foresight of knowing what's going to happen all the time. So you sort of have that trajectory of your life already written out for you by the sounds of it, which is such an inspiration that you got that inspiration, insight from your math teacher, back when you were an impressionable teenager. So then I guess fast forward to Australia, how did you come to Australia? What was sort of the means in terms of the visa, and how did you get that opportunity to be able to come here?
Absolutely. So the teacher, started really showing us the opportunity. The first thing that really inspired me about this teacher was the fact that she was a woman who was tackling what I thought was the hardest subject. All right.
Yes. Hey, hard for me.
Absolutely. All right. So naturally, in our village, and the cultural thought is women are just meant to grow up, get married, and bear children and look after their families. Now you can imagine this just broke my pattern of existence.
Yes,
that fantastic. This is a woman that's coming from halfway across the world where we've never heard of. And she came with no parents, no husband, nothing, and she's coming to teach us one of the hardest subjects. Even the male teachers at our school were not very proficient in the way that she was teaching. So I really paid attention because I was like, wait a minute, this is just against everything I've ever being taught and learned. What else don't I know, or what else have I been, told to believe, which is not what it is? So you can imagine this circumstance in my life.
Yeah, eye-opening and shattering your understanding of sort of everything you knew. Then just not within Zimbabwe and in your own community, but okay, like I'm curious to know where she's come from and what life is like outside of my community. So how did you sort of find that opportunity to be able to come to Australia? And I guess the bravery within yourself as well to say, hey, I'm just going to pack a bag and go to the other side of the world, leave my friends and family behind. And it's a huge gamble no matter what. So I guess two-part question. Yeah, how did you find that opportunity, and how did you find that bravery and courage within yourself to take that opportunity with two hands?
Absolutely. So I think it was Steve Jobs that mentioned this statement that you cannot connect the dots looking forwards. You can always connect them looking backwards. Now, this really intrigued me, the way this teacher was. And we sort of started getting close to her because during the weekend, she'd walk around, take photos, and sometimes she'd even ask, she really had this inert desire to learn about our cultures. And then one day, one of my friends actually invited her to her home, and we were just following her everywhere she was going. She was taking photos, and we'll be in the photos, like kids. I don't know if you've ever seen the kids following around a tourist or something like that.
Yeah.
And we were showing her all the places that we liked going to. So during, part of our leisure, we never had toys. We had the environment to play with. So we would go up, climb a mountain. She came up one day and climbed the mountain with us. Would show her around, we'll show her all the shortcuts to school, because that was what we knew, our environment and how to exist or make sense of the world around us. So in all of those experiences, she started sending those photos back home to Australia.
Okay.
And those were probably her college mates or people that she would have known, or her friends or something like that, just so that she could let them know that she was fine. And unbeknownst to me, that communication started creating interest in some other people that were back here in Australia for her. And most of them started writing to us, oh, look at this little boy here. And we started developing pen pals.
I was about to say pen pals, yes. And that's a phrase that I haven't heard in years. And I've got a pen pal that I've had for maybe 10 years now. And it's adapted off emails because we've got social media now. But what a fantastic thing to go through as a young boy.
Absolutely, yes. So now that was the time I now had to practice my English and, really experience something, because receiving a letter, the first letter I ever received was coming from Australia.
Yeah.
And for me, I don't know, there's a song called The First Cut is the Deepest. I then got addicted to that receiving, of information from places. And maybe that's how I then ended up in digital marketing, because it's all about receiving information.
Right? Messages, yes.
Yes, so we started exchanging letters with some of her friends, and the relationships formulated throughout a span of a year and a half. So I think I received about 3 letters, and as with anyone, I don't know, you said you've got pen pals, but what people would normally send is souvenirs, like an Australian key ring or a sticker or something like that. I think I received a couple of those things. And one thing that I still hold, and it's on the side of my desk right now, is a little koala. It's all dated now, but it's one of those clip koalas that I received, and it came through, and I've always been holding on to it. You know what I mean? Because it just
such a treasure and such a pivotal object in your life as well. Because what did you have really outside of your own community until that point?
Well, and that little koala became my qualification.
I love that.
So I held on to that because it now became a symbol of possibility. That thing came from a universe I never thought existed, and to me it just then cemented inside of me that this was a calling. All right, so I started studying all I could, and I went on and I tried to do mathematics because I thought maybe that was the gateway, yes. And I started looking into what's called TEFOL or something. I don't know if they still have that, teaching English as a foreign language.
Okay, yes.
And then there's opportunities like that in and around Africa, but the tests are a lot, but if something is not your calling, you never find ways to do that. But what I then did was my family took me away from that city, and then we went on to a bigger city where I went to college and I studied information systems. Yes, all right. And that now sort of paved where my career was going. And I started looking for ways and means to find jobs elsewhere. And I knew that with information systems and telecommunications, that was going to be my way out, even though it wasn't mathematics. But I was now in a position to leave the country and actually go out there and do and have a happier existence.
Yes, fantastic. And then that opportunity to be able to come to Australia, how did you come across that itself? Was it applying for jobs after you graduated? Was it something offered through the university itself?
Absolutely. So it was a long, winding road that involved 3 countries and maybe 4 or 5 different jobs. But I'll explain to you how it worked out. So during the time when Zimbabwe was going through its financial problems, there was what was called sanctions. Now, these sanctions sort of stopped the European Union and all the other European countries from taking in Zimbabwean migrants just because the countries were not in the good books with our president at that time. I don't know if you know the history of Zimbabwe, of where the president was taking in all the farm land, and it was just a whole it was a big war, and the country was no longer stable, so they were not taking in any migrants or refugees from Zimbabwe for a very long time. So for some weird reason, somebody mentioned to me that in Malawi, which is in the central, in the heart of Africa, right? If you have a Malawian passport, you would not have to, go through the hoops that a Zimbabwean passport goes through.
Okay, yes.
All right. So what I then took upon myself was I went and lived in Malawi for 2 years, and I started working within a telecommunications company there that then took me in as one of their own, and I got permanent residency in another African country there. So naturally, that meant my journey became a little bit easier for me to then, either come to Australia or stay in Malawi as I wanted to. Now, an opportunity arose in Singapore through that telephone company to learn a new technology that was called WiMAX. Okay. So naturally, WiMAX is like Wi-Fi, but on steroids. And, and it had to be studied in order for it to be implemented in Malawi. So okay. I was one of the 2 people that was chosen to go and learn about this technology. And we were hired by a United States company called Clearwire. So from then on, they started, looking for partnerships in and around the world. And for some weird reason, Australia came up through a company called Vivid Wireless, which was a subsidiary of Channel 7, which had just been established in 2009. It's like this company was just established for me, for me to come to Australia. So in 2010, I made my first attempt to apply for a visa, which was rejected simply because my roots were still in Zimbabwe, and I did not have any paperwork to substantiate the fact that I was going to find gainful employment within Australia. I think within the 90 days that I would have arrived. So that shattered my hopes. First of all, so my first visa was declined.
And it's such a long game at that point because, I mean, I know how your journey goes, but this is sort of like 2 steps forward for 1 step back. So you've just gone through your couple of years and then you think, okay, fantastic. I've sort of been able to, to bypass the fact that I was born in Zimbabwe and I've been able to establish myself here to then have that, that refusal come would have been heartbreaking.
As with everything in life, when I now look back at all of these things that are happening, it's just so beautiful that had I come in 2010 when I would have come through, I wouldn't have been in a position that I'm in right now. So some things, the universe is always conspiring to give you that which you want. Yeah,
it happens for a reason.
Absolutely. So when I went back to Malawi, I was lucky enough that I got a Schengen visa. You're an immigration officer. A lawyer. You understand what a Schengen visa is, right?
No. Look, because I'm a registered migration agent, I just specialize in these employer-sponsored visas. So I will leave it to you to explain to me and the audience.
Absolutely. So a Schengen visa is not for Australia, but it's for what are called the Schengen states of Europe.
Okay? That's where I've heard it. Yes.
Or maybe I said it wrong. So that now afforded me an opportunity to go and live in Germany and learn this technology that I'm talking about, this WiMAX technology. So I lived there for about 9 months.
Okay.
And I couldn't understand the language and the whole driving in the autobahn.
And what time of year you would have copped the cold if you were there for 9 months?
Yes. Winter.
Well, we're in a jumper for the first time in your life.
Oh, tell me about that. Yeah. So all of this just made me think twice about what I wanted, really. So after the 9 months, I was now given an opportunity to extend, and I went back to Malawi. But as soon as I entered Malawi, the immigration there had a few questions for me because obviously the way I'd moved around, they just thought maybe I was using the wrong passport or anything. So I was in the immigration facilities for almost 3 hours while they were looking me up because I'm a Zimbabwean with a Malawian.
But you're only in Malawi for 2 years, before leaving. So now you're back. Yes.
Yeah. Now I'm back from Germany. So it just didn't make sense to them. So, it just goes to show you how stringent the whole visa and border protocols are. So as soon as I got back to Malawi, I started looking now for work because I had this newfound knowledge, but there was no companies that were actually hiring at that particular time. So I just thought to myself, what should I do with this newfound information that I have? And just as anything in life, I started looking online and I noticed that this company, Vivid Wireless in Australia, was really, really, making headway, especially in Perth, to build a significant network. But they were starting to operate smaller networks in Sydney and in Melbourne. And, Vivid was now really trialing this WiMAX technology as a whole. So I found a website that was there, and then I applied.
Okay.
And as soon as I applied, I put out all my credentials and everything else, and voila, the guy from Vivid organized a Skype interview with me, and they said, "Are you the person we're looking for?" And I was like, I remember his name. It was Dave Spence. And I was like, David, I've been around the world, found nothing that works for me. I think WiMAX is the next frontier. And he said, I'm looking for believers like yourself. What we can do is we can bring you in for 2 years and see how it goes. Are you able to move to Australia? And I was like, wait a minute. Ever since I was 13, I've been looking for this opportunity. So yeah, we organized the paperwork. They did most of the work for me behind the scenes, which was just, like I said, when the time has arrived, the time has arrived. So I had to put in all my health requirements at that time. And then I waited until the doctor came through with the information.
Yes.
They had to bring in their nomination certificates and everything else. There was just so much that was needed for me to bring to the table, but for some weird reason, it all sort of played out. And I also had to satisfy that I had an adequate standard in English language proficiency. Yes. Now, do you remember I mentioned earlier on that I started wanting to learn TEFL, teaching English as a foreign language. So,
did they accept that test back then? Because we're talking the 457. So was
yes.
TOEFL, so the studies that you did, that test could be accepted?
2011, yes. So
good.
I put that as evidence. And I also had to show that I did not have any previous criminal record.
Yes.
Now, the one thing that had happened is I'd already registered myself in Europe, and the Interpol would have had my credentials and name and everything. So that was the one thing that was the biggest delay, because now they had to prove that when I was in Germany, I didn't commit any offenses or anything like that. I think that took about 3 months to actually get that information. And in that 3 months, I had no job, and my previous employer... Yeah. My previous employer had no space for me anymore because, it just wasn't the right fit for them at that particular moment.
And then your new employer saying, "Hey, Prosper, look, how are we going for time?" Because they're keen to get you over. I do these employer sponsored visas, and I say to people, look, not trying to play down the situation, but really with the eligibility, with the visa applicant, so like yourself at the time, are you of good health? So you do all your, blood tests and chest x-rays. Are you of good character? So your police checks, and are you eligible for the visa? So you look at the English and the qualifications, the work experience and stuff like that. So a lot of, as you said, a lot of the paperwork and effort is with the employer. There's a lot of moving parts there. And as much as I make it sound simplistic, that's when we drill down to all the moving pieces for the visa applicant. And yes, some of these police checks are an absolute nightmare to get from some countries. And you experienced that firsthand. It was your more recent one, your 9-month stint in Germany that was, like you said, 3 months was it in the end to be able to achieve it?
Yes, it did take about 3 months because of all the back and forth. And then one other thing, with the 457, you had to prove that you had adequate health insurance.
Yes. And that's still around now and maybe for quite some time as well. Yes. Was that a hurdle for you as well, or was that one relatively straightforward?
Right. So I had to, I think the company that they gave me, I remember I had to pay, I think I had to pay about $90 or so equivalent.
Yeah.
Something of that nature. And I had to prove, I had enough funds within my accounts to make that happen. So this is one thing that a lot of people don't quite realize. I had to literally go to a drug lord who operated in that area, and I asked him to wire a bit of money into my account just so that we can
proof of funds.
We can have the funds. Yeah. And the interest on that is exorbitant, and those people would never let you go because they know you're leaving the country. So I had to leave something of value to me at that particular moment. And you know what that was? My passport.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. Now, if you want to move any paperwork and any documentation to happen every time, they need to be citing a passport.
Yes, to check who you are. Yes.
So yes, it was the catch-22 in all fronts. I think for 4 months, I really was going hand to mouth, just making sure that I paid these guys off whatever interest they had wanted, and also satisfying the timeline that I was given by Vivid in order for me to present my documentation and, you know, meet the criteria and also catch the visa processing time.
Yes.
So I was obviously a low risk worker, and usually it would take about 2 months for that to process. But, you know, the systems and processes also in Zimbabwe, I had to pay my way through. You know, it's a corrupt society. You know, we've had people living in one position for 20 years unchecked. And so they make their own rules as they go. And knowing that, and them knowing that you're going to be leaving the country, they will make it as difficult as possible. In that 4 months, that is one time that I actually really, maybe for the first time, and I don't know what your audience is like, I knelt down and I prayed. I was just, please let this go
so
through.
much happening against you. Yeah.
Yes, you know, anything that could break was breaking.
Yes.
And I was just thinking to myself, if I've failed before, you know, on the first attempt, and this time around, you know, what opportunity do I have? What chance do I have? But everything just seemed to fall into place, and I jumped on a plane to Melbourne with nothing but a backpack full of hopes and dreams even.
Fantastic. And that by then would have been 2011, I imagine?
That's 2011, man.
Gotcha. So you're here 2011. So you're 457 visa. And at that stage, it's do 2 years of full-time work in that nominated position. So not just with the employer, but also in the role that was specified to do it, the specified salary, specified tasks and duties. Is it a smooth sailings for you once you're in Australia to get to the permanent residency?
I'm not going to lie, man. It's tough.
Yeah.
Okay. You say in a city like Melbourne, that's a city of the size of a box, but nobody knows your name. Every time you're out, you're introducing yourself. Every time you're meeting new people that have already got their connected, you know, circles already. So you're learning the tech system. You're learning just about a whole new way of living. But I just remember the advice that the Australian teacher gave me, that as long as you're willing to work hard, there's always going to be hope. So I arrived in Melbourne, and, you know, the one place that I could work was actually not in Melbourne, but in Bendigo. And I worked through Census, which had just been recently bought out by an American company, and they were just trialing out this whole WiMAX technology, you know, in and of itself. And during that time, moved down to Bendigo, and I'm just, you know, living in a regional area, knew no one. So every time everybody was going, you know, home or whatever, I had literally no place to go because I was staying in a hostel, and the only way you could meet people was maybe in a bar, and you're spending money. You don't have any stable, you know, sort of circles for you not to, expend yourself like that. So I was just so far away from family and friends, and I, you know, just really struggled to pay my bills because it was all just new to me. And, but I knew I would succeed, and I just rolled up my sleeves and I took my opportunity when it presented itself.
Yeah. And there's people like you and I that sort of, there's no such thing as a bad day. There are challenging days. So you've come to Australia, and it's definitely such an expensive country to live and work in, that it's all of these challenges posing themselves at you. Did you feel disheartened at all, or was it that you knew this was just a tough, challenging period and you needed to establish yourself because there's lots of moving parts around you, just maybe need to root yourself a bit?
All right. So there's what's unofficially called black tax. And I'm going to explain it to you, Evan. So black tax is usually a setup where when we are living at home, we are living with our extended families and everybody knows each other. And we all know like crabs, we are all not going to escape or go anywhere else. But the moment one of you escapes, that person automatically has to bail out the whole clan.
Yeah.
And that was happening as well. So family at home was calling, finding out.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, if I've arrived, if I've set up, when can I bring them across? And you can imagine to look after my dad, to look after some of my family, and of course,
there's pressure.
There was intense pressure. So I had virtually two bills that I was looking after, home and here in Australia. And I'm really trying to set myself up. 2 years just went past, and my employment with Vivid and with Census just ceased, and I was now out on my own. I was lucky they didn't rescind the visa from me. I was still left with 3 years for me just to really set myself up if I was going to stay in Australia or if I was going to go. And I took the opportunity to stay in Australia. So I had to literally start from scratch.
And it would have been as well, because I imagine the technology that you had learned was maybe becoming a bit outdated. Would that be a fair assessment?
Absolutely. So WiMAX technology really never saw the light of day in Australia. I mean, it did, but for a country that's already well set up, we went on from 2G straight to 3G. Now we're on 4G, and I hear people are now utilizing 5G, and so you can imagine technology is very fast moving, and if you hold on to one piece of documentation, especially in the technology space, you are left you're left in the dust. So
yes,
by the time I woke up to everything else, WiMAX was almost just regulated to no longer telecommunications, but to smart meters. And with smart meters, they were just hiring anyone who could just go and talk to people if they wanted to have a smart meter in their home. They were not requiring technical draftspeople.
Yes, gotcha. Yes.
So I was relegated to call center work, really, from the being what I felt like was a high rolling technology that was about to change the world, and the only jobs that were then open in that field were telemarketing jobs, asking people if they wanted this new piece of technology to be installed in their homes. And that really got to me. You can imagine, because it just felt like I had to start all over again.
Exactly, because this journey to date so far in the story had been because of the studies that you did at university that utilized, and that was what brought you to Australia. But then all of a sudden, that's, as you said, been left behind you. So you're very much starting again and starting fresh.
Absolutely. So I moved back to Melbourne, and I started, finding my way here. And I was doing odd jobs, like working in a restaurant, and also just working in telecommunications. And unbeknownst to me, my big break actually came from a restaurant. So while working in a restaurant, I wanted to connect with everybody else who was in that space. And I realized that restaurant did not have a Facebook page.
Okay.
I'm a technology person, and I went on and I created that page without having asked the owner and everything else that comes along with it. And he absolutely did not like that. Okay.
Oh, that's not the way I thought that was going to go.
Absolutely.
we don't reward initiative sometimes, do we?
Oh, no. Because back then the internet was just subject to, bad reviews on the internet.
Well, true, actually making yourself, I can see that. We're a well-running restaurant built on word of mouth. We don't want to make ourselves susceptible to any negative online. Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. So with that in play, I almost got fired for creating a Facebook page, which I was trying to use as a way to connect myself and the people that were working in that restaurant.
Yes.
So, I don't know if you know this, but most restaurants don't open on a Monday. So on the Thursday before the Monday that it was discovered that I had opened the page, the restaurant owner had called me in and said, hey, I heard you're good with computers. Why don't you come over to the office and help us out connecting, their point of sale and things like that. And I was like, yeah, I'll do that. And then he says, I let you in my office. Now you're ruining my business.
Oh,
yes, exactly. So I was like, no. This is probably going to help you out. And it's like, get away. No more. I don't want to see this. And he's like, delete this Facebook page. So it does take a while for a Facebook page to be deleted. You can't just delete it. And
it's not meant to be reversible. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it took about 3 days for me to actually get, the process started, and then it was going to take about 15 days. And in the process, people started leaving reviews because there was not a lot of pages around on Facebook. And then he's like, "Oh wow, okay, this is working now. Stop whatever you're doing in the kitchen, come and work on the computers now." And I'm like, "Wow, okay."
What a roller coaster.
Yes. So obviously I had that fear that I'd already messed things up and I don't want to do it. And I immediately started studying things that pertained to the internet of that time. And, just so that I don't mess things up again, because this is the only opportunity that I had been given, and I didn't want to mess it up. So in my studies, I came across search engine optimization, which is basically SEO. And it opened me up to a whole plethora of information that if you do well with search engine optimization, you could actually help small businesses get found online. And considering I already had this technical background, I just gravitated towards that.
And is there something as well with SEO that, to give you an example, I did my own SEO for maybe 3 years, and and then let's say I maybe did it at 70% of capacity of what it could be done at, and now it's just escaped me because it's forever changing, but it's so much deeper than, say, for instance, how you created a Facebook page. You created the page, there's elements involved with the page, there's a photo, there's the description and the contact details, the hours and stuff, but it's almost tick the box exercise, you move on from it. But SEO is constantly evolving, and you can constantly just lose yourself in that process and become an expert in it. So that was absolutely so suited to not just yourself technically, but I guess where you were at life at the time.
Oh, absolutely. And the lure of it was the fact that the internet was now the high speed of information. And I had already made, headway with telecommunications before. And yes, I was noticing that this whole thing was now, escaping me. This whole telecommunications things. And now the internet was now this new frontier, and I didn't want to miss out. So I just started studying, and then eventually it just started working out. Yeah, so I knew that SEO was the next, somehow I knew SEO would be the next frontier. And like you said, it's constantly changing. But at that moment, quite a lot of people were doing their certification through Google. And I got myself involved and subscribed to that. So had I not created that Facebook page and drawn myself into this whole grand scheme of things, maybe I wouldn't have actually then created the career that I have today. So
yes,
like I said earlier on, some things might appear to you as an opportunity in dressed in overalls, but if you really look at it, it might actually be an opportunity in disguise.
Exactly right. And I guess fast forward to now, where you run a fantastic business in the digital space. Can you please tell us a little bit about what you do with Live Long Digital?
Oh, absolutely. So I work constantly with coaches and consultants and some small business owners so that can grow their business. All right. The way we do this is using technologies of SEO, Facebook, all digital marketing components. What we want for them is so that they start generating leads via automation, in a systemized format that is predictable. Okay. And the reason why I'm really passionate about helping coaches and consultants is just simply the fact that coaches have access to other people that are on their way up. And having had the opportunity that came to me in the form of that teacher, I just really want to help people, solve problems in their lives. And some people don't quite know that they have those problems yet,
Yeah, true. It's talking to someone and having them hold up a mirror for you, but that person being able to have that discussion with you as well. And what you're going through really speaks volumes for your passion for helping others, which really brings me to my next point, which is the beautiful message that you have that you wish to become a role model for those who don't have one. And that for yourself when you were growing up was your math teacher at the time. Can you tell me a little bit about your mission to really be a role model for people and what that can do to people's lives?
Great stuff. Let me really paint a picture for you of why this is near and dear to my heart. In a class setup in Africa, there's usually between 35 to 50 kids at any given moment. All right. So those 35 to 50 kids that were in our class, I think we were about 48.
Okay.
None of them, if I would even try to look for them on Facebook or on any other places, went on to do anything significant. They might have, but it might just have been working in and around the community that we were, and some are already grandfathers, and it's just a vicious cycle. Now, looking at that, of the 48 students that were exposed to this teacher that came into our lives, I am the only person that has actually come up and maybe done something of note. Now, can you imagine how many other kids are just growing up, living in whatever areas that they're living in, not exposed to any lights, food, water, or anything that might actually want them to have a happier existence?
And in this constant cycle, because as you said, there's very minimal change in the big corporates, especially in the political system, where people are just in this cycle. They're just caught.
Absolutely. I'm one of 48. The other 47 didn't make it, so it's about time to maybe, really, really pass the buck and look inward and say, well, obviously, I'm not going to say why me, but how can I then, not allow that to happen to the other 47 people out there? And this could be through coaches, and you're consulting yourself, and You're helping people, and helping them and have a happier existence. That is why I then tend to help people like yourself, because you've got access to people that I can't reach out to.
Yes, exactly right. And to be that inspiration to people, for them to have that, I wouldn't say light bulb moment, almost like that spark of fire within themselves, to be able to say, hey, the spark for yourself of learning about Australia, and then this is something that you wanted to strive for, to help people. People don't know what they don't know, for one, but then to be able to help people to find that spark and ignite it, and to fuel it more into something meaningful that they can do with their lives.
Oh, absolutely. Even and me just being an example, because one thing that was happening when we were growing up is we would grab what's called a centerfold of a magazine, and it usually would be a poster of some celebrity or someone of note. I don't know, maybe kids these days have got Instagram, where they've got instant touch to people that inspire them.
Yes,
we never had that. And the only way we had access to greatness or people doing stuff that they really loved was through those posters. So if I can be a living and breathing example that people can actually say, oh, wow, that's not Eminem, that's Prosper,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? That's the kid from, wait a minute, his village is just up the road from me. Oh, wow. So this is possible. Do you know what I mean? Because if you don't know what possibility is out there, you'd never strive for more. And I don't know if you've heard of the story of Bannister, Roger Bannister.
No.
Okay, so Roger Bannister is one of the first people to have run a mile in 4 minutes. And as soon as he did that, before that, nobody knew that you could actually run at that record. So he set the record that you can run a mile in 4 minutes. And as soon as he did that, students started beating that record. Up until now, we've got people like Usain Bolt that run 100 meters in like 2 seconds or something ridiculous like that. And what that created was a reference point to say, you know what, if he has done it, then this is possible in my life too. And normally when we see and are inspired by somebody, we're not inspired to be what they are. We're inspired to be more. So if I can be that person that can ignite that spark, like you mentioned, then obviously that would be the calling of my life fulfilled.
That's absolutely fantastic. And that came for yourself from your math teacher, Hillary. She was that role model that had such an impact on your life. I'd love for you to please able to share with the listeners. Did you manage to reconnect with Hillary when you came to Australia? Because she was, as you said, she was on exchange teaching math in Zimbabwe, and you knew her name, and that's all you had. So did you manage to reconnect with her since you've come to Australia?
I think it was one of the most beautiful times I've ever seen in my entire life. So I don't know, it's maybe you do this even, and I'm gonna warn you not to. Whenever you meet someone and you're like, yeah, if ever you're in our city, you know, just come around for a cuppa or something like that. So she said that, and she invited us to Melbourne, and when she was leaving, and she said, if ever any one of you guys are in Melbourne, just come around and we can have a coffee. I mean, obviously it's figurative speech.
Yes,
but
well, it's not too hollow of an offer, but there's a lot that happened in your life to be able to get to that point.
Absolutely. Well, I didn't take that as a figurative speech. I took that as an instruction.
It's on the to-do list high up there for life's missions. Yeah, from 1998 to then fast forward, more than 10 years later. Yeah,
absolutely. So naturally, this is what then happened. As soon as I started maybe feeling my feet in Melbourne, I was like, wait a minute. This wouldn't have been possible had I not met Hillary. And she did mention if ever I was in Melbourne to go looking for her. So I naturally just started searching. First point of call was the internet, obviously, but she's not that much of a very public person. So the only information that I sort of managed to find was maybe 6 years back when she was, leading a Mets club at some school, which I obviously knew she was not there anymore.
Yeah.
So I asked people around, and they're like, how do you find not missing persons, but how do you find, people when you're searching for them? And I was given instructions, first of all, police, and second of all, to go to, hire a private investigator. And I was like, nah, that's all too extreme to my liking. But I thought maybe the police would be a better way. And I was just like, hey, you never know if they can radio or tell the friends wherever they are, if they ever come across a Hillary Snays to give me a buzz. So unbeknownst to me, at that week or month, the police always has a publicity arm to them, which basically, looks after, the news that you receive. If something has happened with the police, the publicity arm is the place that they, take that to. And then they asked me to go and talk to one of the ladies there. And the lady had just been informed that Channel 9 was looking for extraordinary stories. And she offered me an opportunity to get the search televised. And I was like, whoa, no, I don't want to do that, simply because of privacy issues. If it's all going to be on TV, then I don't know how she's going to take it.
I'm just trying to find Hillary for a coffee.
Yeah, exactly. It was this whole process. And then it meant I was going to have to go through psych evaluations, just that I was not going to want to look for and hurt her.
Yeah,
gotcha.
It was just
yeah, exactly. It was just all too much, but it was all a journey. And then eventually they convinced me, and we went through the process, and Channel 9 bought the rights to the story, and they're like, whatever happens. So they went on and helped me with a lot of stuff, flights, communication, hired a private investigator, and they found her, but they didn't tell me.
Here we go.
All right. So, and then they reached out to me now, and they're like, okay, right. So there's something that's about to happen here. We found Hillary, but the only way we can bring Hillary to you is if we can film it.
We need to film the outcome. Yes.
There you go. So, I had a couple of days to think about it, and the the need for me to meet her was stronger than anything cameras were going to do, and I was just like, yeah, all right, let's go for it. And they had already sought permission from her and she had already accepted. So they televised the whole thing and I actually got to meet her in Alice Springs. That's where she was now teaching and she's still doing the same thing. And now she's teaching Aboriginal kids in like right in the middle of Australia, man. And you can
so
tell
beautiful. Yeah, just that's her calling, is just helping where potentially others wouldn't be willing to go help.
And I think I just strengthened that for her because I don't think any teachers out there would have ever had a student coming back to them to just say, because of you, I did not give up. And I thought I owed it to her to do that. So yeah,
to let her know that impact she had on your life. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And then we were reconnected and she got to meet my family, of which that's another story. I met my wife here in Australia as well. So, and we've built a life together. Now we've got 2 beautiful kids. And
I was going to lead into that because I was going to say that you're a role model to your family. And when did you meet your wife and how did that come about?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we met in one of my days gallivanting in the city, and I just felt this was such a lovely woman. She was with her friend, and then we met for a drink 2 days after that, and then we just kept in touch.
Fantastic.
But obviously we didn't quite know what each other's intentions were. And then there was a bit of radio silence and then we reconnected again. And then eventually we just kicked it off and moved in together and we started a life together. And now, we've got 2 lovely girls. One is 7 at the current moment and another one just turned 3.
Fantastic. And everything happens for a reason. I mean, we've spoken a lot about your work and stuff, but just family. I mean, if you had have got the visa approved and came in 2010, the first visa, then you would have been doing that gallivanting earlier. So you know what I mean? It's everything happens for a reason.
Oh, absolutely. And I wouldn't change whatever happened to me for the world. But when it's happening to you, you might just think, oh, the universe or God or whatever is just deserted me. But they just may be moving you from one seemingly good opportunity to an even grander opportunity. So yeah, it's like I said earlier, you can only connect the dots looking backwards. You can't connect them looking forwards. So if you're going through stuff right now, maybe trying to get your visa or trying to figure out stuff, just know that where you are, look around, there's lessons to be learned. Just ask yourself, what can I learn from this?
Fantastic. And that's such great insight that you've been able to give today. And probably the one aspect we haven't touched on is the insight you give in your podcast. So can you tell us, the listeners, a little bit about the podcast that you run and what sort of audiences might want to listen?
Absolutely. So like I said, we work with coaches and consultants and we help them achieve massive success using digital marketing strategies. And you would have noticed when we started the show, I've got a very extensive library behind myself.
I did say that, yes.
Yes. So as soon as I started learning about digital marketing, the biggest fear that I started getting is the fact that I would never be good enough because I was yelled at for starting that Facebook page. So ever since then, I just, as soon as I got myself into this digital marketing space, I just, threw myself in this new line of work, reading everything on digital marketing that I can get my hands on. All right. So fast forward to today, we've now partnered with more than 450 businesses, and I've got an entire team of battle-hardened marketing experts that are working for me. And all I ever do is try and help others do and have a happier existence. And I read stuff and then I just pass it on, to them, because I know some people might not have the opportunity to come across the books that I have or the time to actually sit down and read all of this information. So that's what basically my podcast is all about. Insights that are coming in from books that I'm reading and things that we're actually trying out in the marketplace right now, what's working. And I'm just giving that information to those that are on their journey to actually explode their business to growth.
Fantastic. And we've gone through that your business name is Live Long Digital. What's the name of the podcast for people that might want to tune in?
Absolutely. So it's called the Online Prosperity Experience. It's just basically a play of the word prosper. So online prosperity experience. And even the name Live Long Digital. I don't know if you've heard of the Star Trek Leonard Nimoy when he said live long and prosper.
I see what you've done there.
Now you see the nerd in me is coming out now.
And I picked up the dad joke before. It would be remiss of me not to say that the qualification as well.
Absolutely. Yes.
Fantastic stuff, mate. Well, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today and for sharing your journey to Australia. So we've gone through that for yourself, you're unknown to yourself, stuck in a cycle growing up in Zimbabwe with a system where you're very much in with minimal change, and therefore there's minimal opportunity to explore, could there be something more? And that pivotal moment for you came with your math teacher who was working from Australia. She was working in Zimbabwe and just absolutely lit that spark for you to achieve coming to Australia. And I love that we fast forward to, getting your permanent residency and you came out as a worker and then you met your family and going through and saying, look, I still need to catch up with Hillary for coffee as well, because that's what she said to me, back when she was teaching me when I was 13, and you got to achieve that. And it's just such a fantastic story, everything I've just gone through. But the fact of what you do for work to be able to help people and empower people with their businesses and with their knowledge. And it's not just people's businesses, but small business owners or any business owner, any business leader for that matter, they're always taking what they learn in business, taking it in life as well. I'm a strong believer as well that sometimes in life, the right conversation with the right person at the right time can make all the difference. And I think it's absolutely beautiful what you're doing, wanting to be a role model to others, what you do for work. And hey, to boot, we've got that podcast as well that you're able to go through with sharing these for people to and listen to you before they have a touch point with you for a virtual coffee. So I recommend everyone jumps on the Online Prosperity Experience. So I recommend everyone jump on and find the Online Prosperity Experience and give it a follow and give it a listen. And Prosper is an absolutely wonderful gentleman that I've only met just recently, but very approachable. You can link up with him for a virtual coffee and he can discuss your business. And like I said before, I, for several years, did my own SEO just because I'm a very hands-on, meticulous type person, which, working in law, that's just part of my DNA. But I just got left behind completely with SEO. And that's just one aspect of what you do. And sometimes it's being able to link up to an expert such as yourself who can pass on not just your knowledge, but your timely knowledge as well. Because something which is current and working today in the digital space may not be working at all in, not even 6 months' time, sometimes in 6 weeks' time. So for those listening today, Prosper, how can they reach out and get in contact with you?
If you go on to www.livelongdigital.com.au, there will be tools and ways for you to get in touch with me there.
Well, we appreciate your time today, mate, coming on the Journey Towards podcast. And we wish you all the best with not just your journey and your family and the business and the podcast, but the journeys of those that you're going to inspire as a role model to come.
Absolutely. Even obviously, you might not realize this, but what you're doing for people and what you're creating for them here is a platform that will help a lot of people be doing have a happier existence. So kudos to you, man. And I just really want to say one thing, that each and every one of us that's on a journey, you never know, maybe what you're holding in your hands right now may just be a stepping stone. It might not be the be it and end all. So you want to live each day like it counts and remember that it is actually your choice. And there's people like Evan that can help you along the way, because your best life is unique to you. And so you don't want to compare yourself to others and focus on living your best life. Enjoy all the lessons that come along the way, the exploration and the experiences are to die for. Thank you so much, Evan, for letting me share my story with you today.
No, thank you, mate, for such a strong end to the podcast and for all the messages that you share. So thank you, Prosper, and thank you for coming on the Journey Towards podcast.
Well, what an inspiring guy. The name Prosper actually says a lot about him because he, from very humble beginnings and inspired by his teacher to prosper, really. And he's really gone on and done that. And I think that was a great interview, Evan. I really enjoyed it.
What were some of your favourite moments or some of his favourite key messages?
I like how he relocated to Malawi to increase his opportunities, because a lot of people sort of living under a regime like the Mugabe regime may not have felt the freedom to be able to do such things. And then, the opportunities he had to work in Germany and then finally to come to Australia, which was his dream since the age of 13 years old. And the fact that he was able to, the lengths he went to find his teacher, even being on a Channel 9 documentary, and then, meeting her on camera. And it's just a fantastic interview.
Prosper's journey was one where he was really honest about how hard it was to get to Australia. But then when he was in Australia, the motivation to try and find to be able to stay here and sometimes go from job to job as well. So at the moment, Nick, we're finding that a lot of people are struggling to get that clarity to even come to Australia. Can you please give us any updates, or do we have any steps forward towards the Australian border being able to fall down and reopen up to people?
Well, there's nothing concrete at the moment. Scott Morrison said the other day that he wants the border to be open by Easter. In fact, he actually said it would definitely be open by Easter, which I wouldn't be holding my breath for that. But the Australian government has definitely indicated that they do want visitors to be returning to Australia. And at the moment, as we've previously said, only visitors from Singapore, South Korea and Japan can enter Australia. But to help stimulate the economy, Australia needs to become a holiday destination again. So, watch this space. I mean, hopefully it's not too long, but I couldn't say for sure that it will open by Easter.
And with a new episode of the Journey to Oz podcast every fortnight, hopefully by the time we come live again to you in 2 weeks, that we've got an update for you on this.
Fingers crossed, I mean, there's still a lot of people trying to get into Australia to be reunited with family. So, the sooner it happens, the better.
Watch this space.
Thanks for listening to the Journey to Oz podcast. If you've liked what you've heard, please subscribe and leave us a review. We will release a new episode every second Tuesday, so please stay tuned.
The Journey to Oz podcast is produced by Nick Hansen from Hansen Migration, Migration Agent Registration number 1679147, and Evan Bishop from Worldly Migration, Migration Agent Registration number 1679414. Any information discussed in this podcast is made available for entertainment purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional advice. We do not make any guarantee or accept any responsibility for the accuracy and completeness of any of the information discussed. You should obtain advice from a registered migration agent or an immigration lawyer before acting on any of the content discussed in this podcast. You can find a list of registered migration agents by visiting mara.gov.au. The information contained within this podcast may not be reproduced without our prior written consent. In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of land throughout Australia and pay respects to their elders. We extend that respect to all Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders today. Thank you for listening.